there is massive amount of impact and influence that you can have for the better and for the good. And so it strikes me. She's like kind of a deep thinker, if you will, and very in touch. She's like very soft, if you will. And so like her soft skills are like top notch, I think. And when I hear her talk about that, I just think about particularly her work in the family business arena as well, right? So she's got like double whammy impact, right? Yeah. So it's like she's helping families come together and go from success to significance, because at heart she's a value advisor, SEPA, so she's a growth consultant, but she does it through family business. So nonetheless, I think wildly impactful and true. Amy started by educating.
Yep.
And by educating, she was able to start to intrigue the owner. Then the owner said, okay, let's start to do some stuff together, which empowered the owner, and now they're taking action. So, yeah, you can see a work of a SEPA that's been 10 years at the job, and the impact that she's absolutely having across the board for all of our certified exit planning advisors. Hey everybody, and welcome to the Exit Is Now podcast with me, your host, Scott Snider, sitting here with the denim crowd. Me, if you're tuning in and watching the video, watching our video live here, me and Paige decided to wear the same outfit
We
today.
didn't decide to. We just showed up like this just to.
So I was in a meeting, actually, before I came to do our show here, and I walked out, and Paige simply said, "Oh, no." So if you're not watching and listening, we both have like a denim theme going on. I have jeans on and a kind of a denim shirt, and she's got a denim dress. So nonetheless, here we are. So we're at the end of the year, concluding our season 2 of the Exit Is Now podcast. So as it went the year prior, we do an end of the year recap where Paige, who has helped create our show, looks through what she considers to be the top episodes, and from our fan base, our followers, what you guys all thought were some of our best episodes as well. And we kind of recap and revisit another successful 25 or so episodes of season 2, and look forward to season 3. So we're going to go ahead and play those clips for you, talk about those clips as well, and maybe shed some insights into where we started and where we're ending. So Paige, let's go with number 1.
Perfect. So yeah, like Scott said, all of these clips are most interacted with on social, through the podcast platforms, and just overall got the most engagement. So we're going to bring some of those clips back for you to review and give us your insights on. So we'll start with actually season 2, episode 3. This was the episode, How to Build Value in Your Business, a discussion with John Warlow. So we'll watch the clip and then come back.
All right, cool.
Perfect.
Play the clip.
And I think there's a key lesson in that for entrepreneurs, which is, you can maximize the value of your company, you can hit it out of the park, but if you don't have something you want to go do next, you may end up regretting it. And so I think there's a lot of work to be done. And SEPAs can play a huge role here, right?
I think so.
Is being that sounding board for an entrepreneur and saying, hey, what is it you want to go do? Oh, I want to travel. Okay, let's put some meat on the bones. Like, where do you want to travel? What do you want to do when you're there? Like oh, I want to start another business. Well, okay, what?
Yeah, what
I want to get involved in charity. Okay, well, what are you going to do? And get really specific. And I think a SEPA's in a unique position to do that because they're a trusted advisor. They don't have any skin in the game. They're in a great spot to say, help me think this through. And I think that's a big component of having a happy, sort of satisfying.
So that was John Warlow from the Value Builder System, a longtime supporter of our EPI community. I think John, if you've been with us a long time, John's original company in this space was called the Sellability Score, and he pivoted that brand and now is the Value Builder System. And again, one of the most used software tools inside of the value acceleration methodology, and certainly inside of the SEPA community. It was a big year for John, kind of reflecting. That would have been like maybe a January or February episode. So certainly a first quarter episode. What was to come was in May of that year at the Exit Planning Summit, John was inducted into the Exit Planning Hall of Fame, which we call the Exit Planning Circle of Excellence, for his work here inside of the exit planning space. So You will see John as well. He's actually one of our 3 keynote speakers at the Exit Planning Summit in May of 2025 at the Sunseeker Resort in Port Charlotte, Florida. So he's made a pretty massive impact, and I'm looking forward to his discussion at the summit, as it's really about generations and understanding the different generations of owners that we see and their behavior. So what do you think about the episode?
So I think that this episode came out around the time that the State of Owner Readiness was about to be released. And in that report, I think we learned a lot of different takeaways. But I know life after business and personal planning is always kind of a big topic regarding the State of Owner Readiness. So in terms of that clip and just the time that it was released, what stood out to you most about John's insights about the importance of having a clear plan when it comes to life after exit?
Yeah, I think it's also a key theme inside of the EPI community this year, too. And I think it was first thing that struck me, right, is that John's a value guy.
Yeah.
And John's not an advisor. He's a serial entrepreneur. He's grown and exited and sold multiple companies, getting himself all the way to the stuff he's doing today. So having this kind of value and business guy focus on personal planning struck me as kind of interesting. But I think what also kind of stemmed from these conversations is one of the big projects here in 2024 has been the next evolution of the Certified Exit Planning Advisor program, our credentialing program, and we're in maybe version 4 of it now, and maybe version 3 of the online program itself. And so we've extended the program from 16 modules to 17 modules, and that 17th module is now a personal planning module that our future SEPA candidates in 2025 and beyond will have access to, and will learn, really rounding out that 3-legged stool approach: business, personal, and financial. So it kind of struck me when he moved the conversation to personal planning, because he's really a business growth and business value guy. So I think it really shows you how important and how in tune, I think, to the process John is.
Mm-hmm. So you kind of led me into my next question here, but so you've talked about how SEPA, we've added in that extra module with personal planning, but how can SEPAs play a more active role in helping owners to envision this life after business plan and in a specific and meaningful way?
Yeah, I think it takes some extra training, if I'm being honest with you, right? I think most people that are coming to the SEPA program are business-oriented or personal financial-oriented folks. And I think the personal planning feature, whether it's a personal planning coach, a life coach, an executive coach, a personal planning type consultant, it takes a unique, I think, individual to help an owner envision what's next, plan for the future, personal purpose, all that kind of good stuff. If you're more of a traditional certified exit planning advisor, maybe one of the top 3 or 4 or 5 types of advisors, a financial advisor, an M&A person, a CPA, a business consultant, I think that the best thing you can do is lean into some of the tools that you have at the Exit Planning Institute. So one of them that really stands out for me is the Set for Life survey. Another one that stands out for me is the personal envisioning exercise, actually an exercise that in part Chris, my father, who's our head of faculty, teaches you inside of your credentialing program. So I don't think that we as the kind of core group of EPI are the personal planning advisor, but I think that we can have the right conversation that acts as a catalyst to begin that personal planning process. But the earlier the better. I think the kind of flag that is thrown is, well, I'm 40 years old, what does that matter to me today? And what I think we'll find is that business is personal, and that the business is another asset that we have, therefore powering our overall personal financial portfolio and our goals and objectives in life, I think.
Definitely. My last question for you is more business owner focused, but I think advisors can take a lot from this. It's the why. Why do you think some business owners struggle to identify what they want to do after exit, even when they know, they want to exit their business?
Yeah, I think it's a struggle generally. Again, I think to your point, I don't think personal planning it doesn't matter what age you are. It doesn't really matter. And I think that why they struggle so much is that it's your baby, right? It's what you've done. It's although we try to plan as owners for it not to be a part of who we are or a part of our identity, it just is. And so that's I think why personal planning is so impactful, is that knowing that it is such a big part of who you are and who your life and what your life is. What you're doing after that is, I think, a huge part of the plan. And I think one of the reasons they struggle is that it's hard for me, even as I sit here with you today, is though I'd like to think that personal planning is one of my strongest of the 3 legs of the stool. I have my 10-year vision. I know where I want to be in 1 year. I have my 5-year strategy for my personal plan. picturing life without the Exit Planning Institute is a little difficult and frankly a little scary.
Yeah.
And I can only imagine if I'm a 65 or 70-year-old business owner who's done this as long as I've been alive.
Yeah.
And now you're asking to say, who are you outside of your business? I think it's just as though we might think we're strong and strong business owners. I do think that it's kind of a scary time. So I think people kick the can down the road because they don't want to face it.
I think it's also generational. Like, I think it's, you very much focus on your personal planning.
Yeah.
Whereas I think generationally it's a bit different, especially with boomers and.
I would agree.
Imagine.
So, yeah, we do a lot of generational stuff at EPI. We have a whole key observations presentation that we do inside of our chapter network based on our State of Owner Readiness Survey results. And I do. If you looked at, not to go down a rabbit hole with generations, but if you looked at baby boomers, their core value is success.
Yeah.
Not to say that they don't have many values, but one of the ones they lean hard into is success. So whether that's their business, their relationship with their husband or wife, their golf game, their hobbies, they want to feel successful in what they do. They're a very passionate generation. And so I think they tend to focus on their business.
Yeah.
And they don't focus on the personal planning, whereas somebody in Generation X, who's give or take 43 years old to 59 years old this year, they kind of have a natural inclination to focus on personal planning because they value their time. They're trying to work smarter, not harder. And they know that they're in search for this balance of life. So they're in tune to, yes, I'm a business owner, but I'm also X, Y, and Z in my life. So how can I more naturally blend all of these things? And so, yeah, I do think that it's a little bit easier maybe for the younger generations of owners, but I'm a part of that younger generations of owners, and I'd be lying if it wasn't difficult for me to think about too.
Definitely.
And so I do think younger generation owners are maybe more set up for the personal planning conversation, but I do think it's a difficult one to have for sure.
I think it's more talked about too.
Yeah. I think that is. I think it's more talked about inside of those generations, right? Like me and you, we're in the next generations. I mean, you're maybe like what, 2 generations under me? No, 1,
Not
2.
2 generations.
I mean, you're a pretty
no.
young woman, right? No, you're like the upper end of what, the Gen Z. I guess I always consider myself more X than millennial. No,
Really?
yeah, like if you, I mean, here we go for the audience. We're going to go down generational path, but there are 2 things that are very millennial of me, right? I'm
Okay.
very ambitious, but not very framed. So the value acceleration methodology really allows me to think in these 5-year strategies, 1-year plans, and 90-day sprints. I'm also a spender. Millennials earn to spend. I always tell the story, if you've heard me speak on the road, I tell the story of I was talking to my financial advisor about some money I was supposed to put in an investment account. It never came because I bought a 1966 Ford Mustang. So not necessarily the conservative investment that we want. But in terms of, you look at the Generation X, I believe in working smarter, not harder. I value my time. Frankly, I'd rather be experiencing life and spending time with family and friends than running my business. So I'm always naturally looking to decentralize myself.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of owners in that age group wouldn't talk about it in that ways because they don't have the value acceleration methodology vocabulary, if you will. But I think naturally we lean into that. So, but to your point, I think much more natural for somebody in their 20s, 30s, or 40s
Definitely.
than somebody perhaps in their 50s, 60s, or 70s.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Well, cool. Where
next
can
clip?
the audience interact with John next with EPI?
Yeah, so John will be at the 2025 Exit Planning Summit in May 4 through 6 at the Sunseeker Resort in Port Charlotte, Florida. So again, a talk about generations, a really cool presentation that I asked John to give based on all of his research. So one of the cool things about the Value Builder system, right, is that they're always collecting data on the owners that are utilizing the system, regardless of age, right? So now he can dissect that data by age group, and we can see how those owners behave based on their demographic. What do they think about value? What do they think about personal planning? And what do they think about financial planning? He'll be talking about how do we manage those types of generations and how do they behave so that we can be better advisors to them along the way at that summit. So I'm looking forward to that in May.
Perfect. Well, let's jump into our next clip.
Cool. Let's do it. So when somebody asks, like, what is an ownership mindset for you? How would you describe that?
So it's at the foundational level, it is the philosophy that I am responsible for everything that happens in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I am personally responsible. I'm responsible for my actions, my outcome, my effort, the quality of my life, the quality of my relationships. I own it. I talk a lot about this in the keynotes that I give.
Yeah.
You know, the opposite of personal responsibility isn't irresponsibility, even though I know a thing or two about that. It's blame. right? If you're not taking responsibility for your situation, you're blaming other people. And I know a lot about that too. I mean, I blamed my dad for a lot of my problems. I blamed a lot of circumstances for the decisions that I was making in my life. And you know where it got me? Nowhere. I actually on the floor of my apartment. I accidentally overdosed on Labor Day of 2006, and that's when I realized like this life of not owning it is not going to get me what I want.
So I love that show. I mean, that's like early on. You said what, season 2, episode 2? So that really is like time traveling all the way back. It seems like so long ago, but Carrie has become like one of my favorite people. If you are an EPI follower, she was also on that second episode of the year, so that would have been January or February, and then she would have came to the Exit Planning Summit where she was one of my featured owners on our owners panel. She has a really interesting story. If you haven't seen the episode, I would encourage you to go back and listen to it. She has a really interesting story and has taken a pretty substantial company and grown it and turned it into an ESOP, as well as releasing a new book this year as well. And so she's on the speaking circuit. In fact, spoke at our New York City, our EPI New York City chapter owners forum this year as well. So we kind of jumped in 2 feet to the exit planning community, but super impactful and like a really cool person. I would highly encourage you guys to check her out.
Yeah. So in that clip, Carrie really emphasizes self-leadership as the foundation of an ownership mindset. What does self-leadership or an ownership mindset, mean to you, and how do you think it can apply to the community?
Yeah, I think it's. I always think you bringing this up in particular is interesting because I think if you hear me speak inside of our chapters, like we have an example of an ownership mindset right here. I take all the way back to one of those first reviews that you had, and I think it will answer your question in kind of telling your own story. Is that, Paige, who's one of our top advisors to me and Dad, who's a director here at our company, sits on our executive team. I gave her a performance review, and Paige and I are pretty close. And she's kind of have like a really crappy poker face. So though I always say I think I gave her a good raise and a good bonus. She also kind of slid a piece of paper across the desk in some form that said, this is the kind of value that I've driven. And I think that answers her question on what an ownership mindset means. Is that Paige doesn't own EPI, but she's already thinking like a business owner, and she reported, which a typical performance review would be the X's and O's of annual performance, meaning these are the big rocks that were laid out. These are the strategic initiatives. These are the projects. These are the metrics that give us year-over-year success. And she nailed that. What I don't think performance reviews do today is also have your executives or maybe just your general employee base reporting out on what kind of value they contributed. And so by Paige kind of sliding that paper across the desk about value, that is the example of an ownership mindset, is that she's thinking short-term success and long-term significance. And for me, that also is an answer to your question around what is self-leadership, is that I didn't ask you to do that. You did that yourself. And so now imagine if you can take all of your executives and then all of your employees think in terms of short-term success and long-term significance. That is value acceleration at its highest level.
I don't think I've ever gotten to really speak on you telling this story.
Oh, probably not,
No.
actually, because you're usually not here.
No, but you told it at the summit last year, and I had people come up to me, and they were like, nice job. But were you asking for more money? And I was like, no, I just am trying to incorporate, to make it clear, I was just trying to incorporate what you and Chris and the community have taught me, and just showcase a different side. I think marketing, it's a unique role, right? Because it's not everyone can see how it's directly tied to value, but like a brand, building the brand and how that kind of stuff very much is. So that was my perspective on what I was trying to do.
It is fun. You didn't ask for more money per se. You just said, look, you have taught me to think in terms of income and value. And your review, Scott, doesn't report on value. So here's my take, perhaps, on the value. And this might have been like your first performance review as an executive. If you think about it,
it has. Yeah,
it would have to been.
Yeah, it was
been
like
2021.
3 or 4 years ago. Yeah.
So, and I think that speaks volumes to how you self-motivate and self-lead, as well as an ownership and an ownership mindset. And so, I think it was a big win to kind of change the trajectory for those that maybe heard us talk about it at the summit. For me, it was like kind of like a uh-oh moment, because I'm like, what a huge win. But how do I start to compensate for the value growth?
So that leads me into my
Okay.
next question
Yeah, sure.
so that can be uncomfortable for some owners, or I think you and Chris are very open about just really everything, which enables not only just the executive team and the leadership team and everyone here at EPI to have an ownership mindset. So it makes it kind of easier for us. How would you say owners that are uncomfortable with sharing that kind of information, how can they still enable their employees to have that mindset?
Yeah, so it's a good question. It's a question that people have asked me to write about and put in a course. But it's not easy. So the point where, if you rewind to what my answer just was, when Paige was comfortable enough to slide the piece of paper that says, here's the value that I driven, that was like a 2-year in the making moment.
Absolutely.
Because it wasn't really about, so I guess maybe 2 or 3 things to directly answer your question. Number one, she has to know what value acceleration means and is, right? So she has to be in tune to the book Walking to Destiny and in tune to the value acceleration methodology and how it works. And then she has to believe in it and work on it every day inside of our business. 2, I think it comes down to culture and communication. So one, of the 2 part, one, you have to have great core values. So I think our core values speak and lend themselves to a value acceleration-centric life or mindset. And 2, you need to have what we call trust accelerators. So we were able to build a relationship based on, we believe in value acceleration, we believe in these core values, and we're accelerating our communication, trust, and decision-making through these trust accelerators that we've agreed on. And that took 2 years to implement. So your question, and for our audience, if you're an owner listening, this isn't going to be, you listen to this episode in December, and in January, boom, here we are, right? It's, if you believe in what me and Paige are talking about on the show right now, it's let's start reading the book Walking to Destiny over the Christmas break, and in the new year, start to take some of that on and begin to educate ourselves as owners, and then educate ourselves as executives, and then call me biased, but I think it's true, then engage a certified exit planning advisor that can actually help you implement this stuff into your business and into your way of life. And so it's not easy.
Yeah.
It takes that foundation first. And so that's kind of how I think we got to that moment is it's not turnkey. It's long-term strategic transition.
Definitely.
And so I would start there. So my advice to owners is just that. Read the book, listen to this podcast often, and challenge yourself to think more long-term value versus short-term success.
Perfect. Well, that covers my questions there.
Cool.
Thanks for touching on that.
So move to the next one?
Yeah, let's jump
All
into
right.
the next clip.
All right, that's cool. Let's do
Okay.
it.
So it became very stressful for them as well. And I guess the analogy that I've used to people is Bill had jumped in the driver's seat
Yeah.
of the car and he's cruising down the freeway.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of times where I didn't like where we were going. So I kind of reached over and grabbed the steering wheel and
Yeah,
tried
like
to take us to
yanked
it
it.
and yanked
Yeah.
it to the off ramp.
Yeah.
And he's looking at me, what are you doing?
So Mike Berlin. First, I will say Mike Berlin is one of our more recent episodes of the year. A longtime family friend of ours was actually, for those of you that have been longtime followers of EPI, one of my dad's clients back in the Aspire management days. So dad, again, being an active certified exit planning advisor, a value advisor. Mike engaged my dad, Chris, to help them grow and exit their company. If you listen to the episode, another great one that I would go back to and listen, he has a wildly unique scenario where he kind of fell to 2 of the 5 Ds inside of his business. So a ton of stuff going on in that episode. But Mike, if you're listening, love your brother. He sent me you probably didn't see this page. He sent me and Dad like a very personal email thanking us for having him on his show. And another person that I'm inviting back to our exit planning summit in May of 2025. He will also sit on our owners panel and be able to share his story live with our audience there.
That's
so
super
nonetheless, a great episode. And Mike, you made 2 episodes now. Now we're in our recap episode with me and Paige.
Perfect. Well, yeah. So watching the episode and seeing what Mike had to say, I think he really shared, like you said, his emotional and just overall journey. And I think it's a unique perspective because he was very young when 2 of the 5 Ds struck him, which is why we talk about the 5 Ds and why it's a lesson it can happen too young. So I guess what resonates most with you from his story and what he shared?
So from maybe 2 perspectives, Paige, right? Because there's like the educator, president of EPI in me, and then there's the fellow business owner in me. And it's my first thing that comes to mind is jarring. Is that Mike is still a young guy, was young when he kind of faced this kind of traumatic scenario in his life. And it gives you like this moment where you, particularly because he's so close to us, it's like, shit, is that going to happen to me? And so I think it really forces you to kind of check yourself a little bit. And me, again, being biased and towards the value acceleration methodology, I say our me and dad, and then our me, dad, and our executive team doing everything in our power to have contingency plans in place in case some of these wild worst-case scenarios happen. Because I think if you ask Mike, and he might have said it in the show, he would have never thought that was going to happen to him when he first started that business. And so the first thing is like jarring. The educator in me says, I'm thankful that Mike is willing to share his story because both advisors and owners can learn from it and begin to plan, because it quite literally is a perfect example of what we teach inside of the value acceleration methodology and why it's so critical, I think, to plan often.
Yeah. I think a shift you've made this year that I've seen is, and specifically in this clip, Mike talks about how he's letting someone else drive, but it's hard for him to not reach over and grab the wheel a little bit. And I think that's been a shift that you've made this year, where sometimes you let the executive team kind of make our own decisions and sometimes fail, and that's okay. How do you deal with not always just leaning over and grabbing the wheel?
It's super tough, I could tell you that. What Paige is talking about is a term called decentralization. So something that you hear a lot about inside of the value acceleration methodology, something that we might not hear a lot about as a business owner. And Mike wasn't necessarily decentralized from his business when he hit kind of those speed bumps, which are the 5 Ds. 2 years ago at EPI in our own business, we started to decentralize dad away from the company. And then really over the last, call it 12 or 18 months, we've begun to decentralize me from the company as well. And what Paige is referencing is really promoting in some accountability and further responsibility and ownership mindset to our executive team. So how do I not grab the wheel? You just kind of got to take a deep breath and throw the parachute out. I don't know. Really, I think it's honestly one of the hardest things to explain to an audience of advisors and owners, or really anybody. And I always feel a little silly saying it. It's the classic, you just have to get really uncomfortable or really comfortable being uncomfortable. Because there's without doubt things that you guys do that I wouldn't do or wouldn't do it that way. I think it's a lot easier said than done, because I've certainly been blessed with a leadership team that clearly knows what they're doing because our business is doing well. So I think it would be a lot harder to do if we weren't hitting the numbers, right? If we weren't hitting our metrics, our goals, our projects, or our financials, I might want to grab the wheel more so. So I think it's always a tough one for me to explain, because it's not comfortable at all. But we're clearly doing the right things because we're learning and growing along the way and continuously hit our growth numbers. The last thing I'd say on this that maybe gives some comfort to business owners listening is that I just started to put 1% of revenue aside for mistakes. And so there's undoubtedly a mistake that we will make that costs the company money, and at least if I'm budgeting for it, it doesn't hurt as bad. And so that perhaps eases the mind of some owners listening, because most of it's kind of a soft issue to deal with. It is quite literally getting comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah. So we like to give a lot of actionable insights and takeaways. What is the first step you think an owner should take in the decentralization process? I think there are a lot of different things, but what is the first thing that they should do?
So other than putting aside the budget money, so like let's get that aside, because we know right out of the gate for sure we're going to be making mistakes. 2, if you're going to start to decentralize yourself as owner, you have to look internal first. You have to look inside. And so if you don't know what you're going to do with the extra time that you now have, because you're not doing those types of things because other people are doing them, you're going to grab the wheel. You're not just going to jerk the wheel. You're going to remove the person from the driver's seat and get back in. So we need to do a self-investigation of what do we love inside of our business? What are we the best at, and what do we enjoy the most of? And so for me, it has to be people and culture. Like, I love our people here. I love driving culture. I like being the visionary, and I like working with our partners and kind of VIPs. And so if I can do that every single day, I'm probably doing something that I love, and I'm probably in like the right seat on the bus. I would also look at so I self-investigate. I would also look at what am I doing outside of the business, because naturally I might have some more time to go do some other stuff, volunteer, work on a board, spend more time with my kids, whatever that might be. What am I going to do with that extra time in my life that I now have? And maybe the third thing that I would do is also go through some type of personality testing so you can understand what your executive leaders are the best at. And I think if you arm yourself with a budget, a self-evaluation, and an evaluation of your key executives, now we can start to say, this is the plan, and this is how we're going to begin to decentralize.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like assessing your executive team and those key people that are going to take over the parts of you decentralizing is also a really key aspect of the process, and one of the first things that you should do.
I think that you have to want to do it, right? What you'll find in some of those assessments is that Paige might say, look, she's a really good executive, but she's not the right executive for a decentralized, ownership thinking, value acceleration centric company. And so you kind of all got to buy in. And I mean, you're sitting right here, so it can't be easy. Can't be easy to say. One time, I think most recently, you said to me, Scott, I'm not the entrepreneur, I'm the intrapreneur. So I keep pushing stuff over to Paige, like, I don't know, what would you do? And she finally said, like, look, I get the ownership thinking thing, but like, dude, this isn't my company, this is yours. I'm the intrapreneur, you're the entrepreneur, right? So it's got to be a level of stress that somebody has to be willing to undertake.
I think that's fair. I think that, I guess that's fair. I guess I haven't thought about it that way. We talk a lot about decentralization of the owner and how it impacts the owner. I guess, that's
well,
really
fair. How does it
fair.
impact you, right? I mean, I think that if you're not willing to take on, because you started this episode talking about value acceleration centric mindset, ownership thinking mindsets, and I can tell you for any owners listening, it's definitely stressful, right? And so by me saying I'm going to remove myself from the business more so than ever and promote you, you're still not the owner, but I'm asking you to act like one. And so you get some of the stresses that I might have. So I think you also need to ask your executive, is this what you want for your career in life?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think we hear a lot about the owner's perspective. We don't necessarily talk about like the executive team's perspective, which is why I'm really excited about Drive Value and what we've launched there in the platform, educating not only the owners, but also the next generation of leaders. I think it's just
Totally agree.
super fascinating and like a market I guess we don't talk about as much, because if the owners are decentralizing like we're teaching, then the next generation should also be bought in on value acceleration methodology, the ownership mindset, all of that stuff.
Exactly.
So I think that is a great perspective and it all ties together.
It does. So why don't we take a quick break?
Perfect.
I think we have 3 more episodes to get to in her kind of top 6 list, if you will. So let's take a quick break and we'll be right back.
Perfect.
Are you a business owner seeking to unlock the true potential of your enterprise? Look no further than the second edition of Christopher Snider's revolutionary book, Walking to Destiny: 11 Actions an Owner Must Take to Rapidly Grow Value and Unlock Wealth. In this updated edition, Snider presents proven strategies for maximizing your company's value and accelerating growth. Whether you're aiming to sell or simply want to ensure long-term success, this book offers a blueprint for building a thriving, self-sustaining business. Walking to Destiny isn't just another book, it's a game changer, backed by Snider's own experience as a successful business owner and as a CPA. This book bridges the gap between business owners and advisors, guiding you towards financial freedom. But don't just take our word for it. Hear from those whose lives have been transformed by its insights. One satisfied reader raves, "The best guide for transitioning out of privately owned companies. I recommend it to all business owners and advisors." Another praises it on its focus for maximizing business value, calling it their, quote, principal tool for educating owners. Ready to take control of your business's destiny? Visit walkingtodestiny.com now and use code EXITISNOW to claim your free copy of Walking to Destiny: 11 Actions an Owner Must Take to Rapidly Grow Value and Unlock Wealth. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Make the moment perfect by seizing this opportunity today.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Exit Is Now podcast. So second half of the show, we got 2 more episodes to get through to talk about the top episodes of the year. So Our next episode is with our friend Justin, who talks about like your authentic self. I think a topic and maybe a buzz topic that we hear a lot about, particularly I think post-pandemic. So let's take a listen.
Things I sometimes wonder is if I would have a greater reach had I had that focus in the past. But the good thing is now I have that focus. So if you were to look at everything that I put out today, it is all centered around helping people find and live their authentic life.
Yeah,
my message individually, the message at RLS Wealth, the podcast that I rebranded, it's all in one area. So I had to go through a period of time where I did all of the things, and that helped me figure out what my thing or my purpose was. But I will still have multiple ways to bring this to the world in the future.
So Justin is, I think, one of your more unique guests, right?
Yeah.
He is, if you just, perhaps it's a stereotype, but if you just look at the screen and you're watching him on the video, he doesn't look like a professional advisor, and he doesn't look like a financial advisor, but he is. And what I love about what he does in his teaching and in his story is that I think what makes him a really good financial advisor is that he taps that personal planning, because in part he taps who that owner is. And so very interesting episode. He was a power session speaker at our 2023 summit, which I was so inspired that I wanted to get him on the show and expand what he was talking about. Remember, the power sessions are only about 15 to 18 minutes long.
Yeah.
So we took an hour to expand on what he has going on. So
So he talks a lot about incorporating authenticity into your brand. So when
Sure.
you talk about he doesn't look like your typical financial advisor, that's that's how he would describe himself
Very
as
Justin.
well. Yeah, exactly. So authenticity can mean infusing yourself into your brand and making sure that your brand is reflective of you. But decentralization is also a core principle of value acceleration methodology. So how can you do both of those?
Yeah, I think it's actually really hard, because it's something that you and the marketing team talk to me about, right? They want to see the true Scott, and then the true Scott kind of becomes like the brand and the face. So I think it goes back to core values and culture. So though me and you are certainly different, there's a lot of things that are the same. And if you looked across the board at the leadership team, although we're different, there's a lot of crossover. And so when I'm being perhaps my authentic self, it actually lends itself to who you are. It lends yourself to Jesse, to Josh Koza, to Jocelyn and Chase, our executive leadership team. And then it also becomes the way that we hire. So if you looked across all 35 or 40 employees here at EPI, though we have our uniqueness, we're actually kind of the same fabric. And so I don't think being your authentic self and then decentralizing yourself and building a brand, it all centralizes on who the owner is. I think it has to be expanded across the entire company.
Definitely.
And I think you do that with core values and core value hiring.
Yep, I was just about to say, I think it's core values, it's the trust accelerator, it's really finding your purpose and uniting everyone around that purpose
true.
and that
That's a
mission
good
as
one,
well.
too.
Yeah, so I think we are in a unique spot where our community is also really become the face of our brand. Like it's not necessarily you or Chris.
Yeah.
It's the community.
Well, that is a key point too, right? I think if you rewound 5 years ago, I think you would say that the EPI community is still very Chris Snider, Scott Snider centric and driven. What you see today, I think, is to your point, a community led by the community, and so there's multiple leaders within it. Whether it's our chapter presidents in our regions, in our chapter network, our summit speakers, our thought leadership council, our faculty, or the many individual SEPAs that we have across the nation and frankly across the globe, they're all carrying the same torch. Alignment is key, right? So you have alignment around core values, mission, purpose, and vision. And so though me and Dad years ago might have created the change the outcome, created the success to significance, it is now a part of who we all are. And so I do think it's very authentic still, but it's not authentic to one perhaps individual.
Exactly. So kind of pivoting here, but what advice or what would you say to SEPAs or advisors on building trust and authenticity in their client relationships?
Really cool question. So earlier in the show, we talked about Carrie sitting on the business owners panel that was at our summit this year. I asked a question, right? If you were there's like 800 advisors in the room, and I said, look, I have to ask you this question. Now be nice, because these are all my members out here, but I have to ask you as a panel of business owners, what do you look for in an advisor? And what they said really were two things. One, I'm looking for an accountability buddy outside of my executive team, outside of my business partners, outside of my board. I'd like to an accountability buddy. And two, which maybe lends itself to the answer to your question, is I'm looking to have a relationship and not be a transaction. And so I think that how you build trust as an advisor with your owner is to actually get to know them. And yeah, it takes time, right? It is not a transactional world anymore. It might have been maybe with our baby boomer or traditionalist generations, but if you're looking to have growth and impact with somebody that is 59 years old or younger, you need to understand who they are, understand their desires, their pain points, where they're going, what powers them, what is their purpose. And you do it by spending a little bit more time. And if we can do that, and I think that you can have a deeper relationship with an owner, and maybe even go deeper than that and create your own trust accelerators with your clientele to say, this is how we're going to operate, and this is why it's going to be an impactful a relationship.
Yeah, I think that collaboration and kind of empowering conversations with owners has been a really big topic for us this year. So how have you seen that evolve?
Yeah, I think that it's been a core theme, right? So we have a bunch of academy courses around it and a bunch of content around it. I encourage you all, if you have not already, go to the EPI website, go to the resources tab, and download Mastering the Market. It's all about best-in-class advisors, and one of those best-in-class features is collaboration and the connection of people. So I think it's just more up in front of us more so than ever. More people are becoming CEPAs than ever before, and they want to be best-in-class. That's what we teach at EPI.
Yeah.
So when you lean into best in class, you see connection and collaboration, and a part of connection and collaboration is having these empowering conversations with owners that allow them to intrigue and empower themselves to go out and take action. And so I just think it's more upfront and center than ever before. But I also think the market is upfront. It's why the show is Exit Is Now, right?
Yep.
Because exit is all the way around us. And so yeah, I think that it's a big change that I think that we have in the professional advisory community, but a change that owners, I think, are looking for.
Perfect. Well, let's hop into our last clip.
Last clip of the
It's
year.
with Amy Wirtz, our 2024 Exit Planner of the Year.
Sure.
Okay.
So we got to actually get you over to your session that you're hosting. So before you go, as the new Exit Planner of the Year and somebody that's held their credential now for 10 years, what is your advice to all of our new CEPAs coming in? If you had to think of one thing on the spot to the 800 new folks that became CEPAs in the first quarter of this year, what is your recommendation to them as they embark on their CEPA journey?
It's a journey. It's a journey. Open your mind, open your ears, open your heart, and this community will give a lot to you.
Absolutely.
But more importantly, you will take that and you will change owners' lives for the better, and that is the purpose of this organization.
Absolutely.
Go out and make a difference.
Very well said. All right. Yeah, so Amy, man, she has been a part of my life probably for over a decade.
Yeah.
And a very interesting story time, but a rabbit hole for another day.
Yeah.
Again, Amy is our 2024 Exit Planner of the Year, and well-deserved. She's in that clip you hear her talk about being a CEPA for 10 years. So one of the originals, for sure, no doubt.
Absolutely. So I think we're all very excited here at EPI when Amy won. And she came and spent some time with us in Cleveland to create some content that you guys will be seeing roll out in 2025.
Yeah.
But on the note, you talk to Amy and you ask her what advice would she give. And so she kind of emphasized she called it life-changing impact that CEPAs can have on business owners. What does that mean to you, and how do you see this play out throughout the community?
Yeah, so that I think it's one of the best things about being a certified exit planning advisor is that there is massive amount of impact and influence that you can have for the better and for the good. And so it strikes me. She's like kind of a deep thinker, if you will, and very in touch. She's like very soft, if you will, and so like her soft skills are like top notch, I think. And when I hear her talk about that, I just think about particularly her work in the family business arena as well, right? So she's got like double whammy impact, right?
Yeah.
So it's like she's helping families come together and go from success to significance, because at heart she's a value advisor CEPA, so she's a growth consultant, but she does it through family business. So nonetheless, I think wildly impactful and true. I think CEPAs, regardless of what type of advisor you have, we have a chance to really make some deep impact and change the trajectory of the way we do business in America, which I think sounds like a pretty bold statement, but I think it's very true.
I mean, we talked about this earlier in the episode, but we released our State of Owner Readiness earlier this year, and you can see the direct correlation and impact that exit planners and SEPAs are having on the business owner community.
Yeah, I mean, owners are in the 2023, I guess that would be State of Owner Readiness survey that we debuted at the beginning of this year. Owners across the board are more ready and prepared than ever before. So, I think Amy started by educating.
Yep.
And by educating, she was able to start to intrigue the owner. Then the owner said, okay, let's start to do some stuff together, which empowered the owner, and now they're taking action. So, yeah, you can see a work of a SEPA that's been 10 years at the job, and the impact that she's absolutely having across the board for all of our certified exit planning advisors.
Yeah. My last question for you is about EPI's purpose. Okay. So our purpose is to build significant companies.
Yeah.
How can the EPI community impact that and play a role in making sure that we're fulfilling our purpose?
Absolutely. So I think that we start by motivating and educating a business owner, right? That's where it all begins. It's one of the 4 key observations from the State of Owner Readiness survey. When you look at it, the investment in education that we made with business owners has resulted in more prepared and more ready companies. And so by taking that small step, which is spending a little extra time with a business owner to teach them about what value acceleration is, what are the key concepts and principles of the methodology, what is this alignment of the 3 legs of the stool, and how it has direct impact to being more successful year over year, but also has direct impact to long-term significance or value is absolutely critical. So once we can do that, now we can really roll up our sleeves from our different perspectives, whether it's financial planning, M&A, family business, life coaching, consulting, and really get to work on driving value in the business while aligning business, personal, and financial goals.
Perfect. Well, thank you.
Well, thanks for spending some time. It's always cool to get you. I remember you've come a long way, too, from this, you were like, oh, man, I don't want to be on the show, to now you're on, the show at least 2 or 3 times a year, I feel. This is great.
Yeah, it's much more comfortable now.
It's a lot easier for you. And that was, I think those are some of our top episodes, really taking me down memory lane. So for our audience listening and watching, I really appreciate you guys tuning in. It's always fun to kind of share our value acceleration story and share a bunch of great experts with all of you that I hope do have growth and impact on you and your firm and the way that you're working with business owners, or if you're a business owner or business leader yourself, change your perspective a little bit so you can run down this significant journey with us, if you will. And so we'll be back. Season 3 of the Exit Is Now podcast, debuting as we kick out the year in January. So our next episode is January 8th, where you will see Amy Wirtz, our 2024 Exit Planner of the Year. So we will also continue our Flip the Script episodes. This year, if you followed, we did Flip the Scripts with my executive team, people that are very close to me. We're flipping the script again in 2025. We are going to have certified exit planning advisors outside of our team here at EPI that have impact on our value acceleration journey as owners and leaders ourselves. So again, thank you, everybody. Hope you guys all have a great holiday season. Happy New Year, Merry Christmas. We'll see you in 2025. Thanks.